But the President's Advisory Council will lead today's session, Next Step in Strategic Planning. The President's Advisory Council was formed in August of 2016 from a call to engage internal and external stakeholders to develop a strategic plan. Efforts begin now and will move the college into June 2021. Known as the PAC, this group represents all employee classes at ICC. Now that the plan has been developed, today representatives from this team will discuss an approach for deploying this plan. Please help me welcome the President's Advisory Council.
Well, thank you. This session is being recorded, so as we report out, which we'll do at the end, there'll be microphones and the PAC members will be running them to you as you report out. But first I want to start by introducing the other PAC members that are with us today. My name is Jill Wright, and I'm a member of the President's Advisory Council. We have Andrew and Arnitria. Where's Arnitria? She just ran to her office. Okay. So, as you heard this morning, you heard from Mary with Achieving the Dream. That was followed by an announcement that we'll be having this session. So what we're going to do today is, now that all of you have been involved in helping us find the 5 strategic goals, which are clearly identified on the table, what we'll be doing during this session is we will be doing an exploration of institutions that have developed and been very successful in implementing and scaling the projects that have resulted from challenges very similar to ours. So, obviously you're sitting at a table that interests you with your goal, and each of you should have at least one portable device at your table, and you're welcome to get your own out as well. But what we'll be doing is we'll be looking at the Achieving the Dream initiative site, and then also the Aspen schools. The Aspen schools are also schools that were very high achievers in really overcoming some challenges and implementing things to scale that really improve student opportunities, as well as employee opportunities. So to get started, if we could just, on the ICC website, if you could just log into the strategic planning portion of the website, if you could find that on your portable device or on the college portable device. Does anybody need another laptop? I have another one up here. Oh my goodness, these things are heavy. This is like a weight. There you go. You can have it. It doesn't matter to me. Okay. If you go to icc.edu/strategic-planning / you can get there. You're still, I'm so glad you're being welcomed. It's very important. I'm going to get everyone there. Let me know when everyone is there, and then I'll lead you through the next step so that we only have to launch this one time. Everyone find it? Not yet. Are you still loading? It's awesome. Who knew? I found out from this that the college had 15 laptops that we could use. I was impressed by that number. I know you did. You have to sign a whole lot of stuff.
Just check the link up on the address
What?
bar.
Library has 2. We're learning about all types of hidden treasures this morning. Are you there? Are you there yet at employee training? How you doing over there, Scott Paulson? You're still searching?
All right, you just go all the way down and right there in this tree.
Oh, yeah, now you tell me.
Well, you got it.
So as we get started here, you can see,
Go scroll.
if you've not visited this site before, this site really, purpose of this site is that it makes public for internal and external stakeholders all the parts of the strategic planning process and the outcomes from the process. And so this is the next step in the process. So if you're there, are you there? We can go now. Scott Paulson's there. I'm teasing. All right, is everyone there? All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So if you hover over the next step in strategic planning, you should see this site. And this is out there beyond today. This is permanent on our website. You can select from Achieving the Dream Intervention Showcase or the 2017 Aspen Prize finalists and past winners. So if you select the Achieving the Dream option, you'll come to a site like this. And what I'd like you to do is, there's lots of things on Achieving the Dream website, so if you have time before we do the report out, there's many interesting things here to look at. Tells you a lot about the program. But if we click to view the intervention showcase, this is where we're going to find that very rich information from over the 200 colleges that Mary spoke of this morning during her presentation. And if you click that, you'll get something that looks like this. Something that looks like this. So, what we're encouraging you to do, for example, Goal 1, completion. One of the things that we found about completion is that one of the key factors in helping students complete is having a strong advising presence and model on your campus that's sustainable and scalable. So if you're Goal 1, take a look under advising, because that's one of the key processes that leads to completion. For Goal 2, college and career readiness. If you, as you heard this morning, one of the things that leads to college and career readiness is that early college, is connecting that pathway at the high school to the college. And we've started this already with early college last year. We saw a lot of systemic changes, and there's could be more to come. So if you click on developmental education, you'll learn about some of the bridge programs and the schools that have implemented things with early college and other developmental initiatives so that the students come to us college ready. Again, it's connecting and aligning. Goal 3, curriculum. Scroll down, well, you don't need to scroll down, it's over in the orange. Curriculum redesign. You can see how other institutions have redesigned their curriculum. Goal 4, student engagement, first year experience. I think that it's right up here. Goal 4, first year experience. Look how other institutions have developed and implemented a first year experience. And Goal 5, employee training. Scroll down, and that one you do have to scroll down for. Professional development. What? It's not showing on a phone? Oh my goodness. Right here. Kelly. So if you click the intervention, you can read about institutions. What'll happen is there's 198 interventions for student engagement. You can read through, these are the institutions, and these are the types of projects that they completed. So what we'd like you to do for about 30 minutes, click around in those boxes and talk about what you're seeing. Look at the targets. Look at the impact that they've had on campus. Look at who is involved. And then at about 1:45, we'll just do a simple report out of what you saw, what was interesting, and what are the possibilities. All right, let's go ahead and get started in the report out.
Yeah, you can get it on a regular, you can get it on a regular computer. But some company in Baltimore or something had it yet.
Scott Paulson, would your table like to go first, or would you like to wait? You would like to wait. Okay, well then. Yes? All right, hang on. I'm going to give you the microphone, Dorothy Dean. Oh, yes. Here you go.
All right. No. A couple of things we found. We're on the curriculum one, is that a lot of them have to do with developmental, math, and English. I looked at some of the online ones related to online, and it was, we adopted this rubric. So, a lot of the stuff would be, there's only one or two sentences, so we can't get any further into the meat to see, okay, what did you do, those kind of things, without, the code, which we discovered we have to have once we join. So, it's very interesting, but I guess I want to know a little bit more. Tell me more, here are all these. And I have to, I guess, spend more time looking and all, personally. But, in curriculum's a whole bunch of other stuff, and there just seems to be this little focus on, we were talking developmental, math, and English. So, it seems to me like if we could get to the meat, it would be far more helpful for us when we develop our own curriculum, or when we look at our own curriculum. Does that make sense? Because we already know, but how can we integrate
Yeah,
that?
I think you're right on target. You're right. You can't, it's very hard to tell from what you're reading what the dynamics were that worked for and against a particular intervention. What some colleges have done is once they identify these institutions, they make a contact and send a small team of faculty to the institution to kind of live with the folks that developed whatever it is for a day or so.
Okay, so let's say there's a coach for, let's say, Montgomery Community College.
Mm-hmm.
So our coach, and this I guess is just a big
No,
question.
not coaches, you.
Then what do the coaches do? Would the coach, our coach, be able to tell us the other coach's name or who to contact at Montgomery?
Sure,
are they
but-
like the, what I want to?
No, absolutely. No, I misunderstood you. Absolutely. We can make the contacts for you. We can tell you what institutions would be maybe good models for you to look at. From that point forward, though, the best way to really get in there is either faculty to faculty or president to president or some administrator to administrator. It's going to make a whole lot more impact. If a faculty, I don't know if you're faculty or not, but if you as a faculty member call your counterpart at Montgomery in whatever discipline it is you teach and say, hey, look, I just found you on Intervention Showcase. We're ATD, you're ATD. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you did this? And then if it sounds interesting enough, you say, well, gee, it'd be great if a couple of us could come visit. And colleges are really receptive to that, the same way you would be if some college calls you. You'd probably much rather have somebody from another college call you who was a peer of yours than have a coach call a coach, because that's like 3 times removed. Believe me, we're more than willing to do whatever it is. We'll help you.
So, like, if we found a project here and we could contact that school, and maybe we have something going, like the developmental, and we have something going, but maybe there's, we could look at what they did, and maybe we could tweak
Absolutely.
whatever we have now. Like, there's a couple in here, like online courses and all, and we use Quacky, but maybe there's some stuff that's not in Quacky that, we could pull over, or, so that's part of this also?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a great deal of value in you not having to do all of the legwork to create something new, right? You're going to have you're going to have a ready supply of 200 plus institutions, and frankly, the network is strong enough that I have not run across a college which has said to another college, "No, you can't come. We're not going to share it with you. We don't want you to know about it." I mean, that's just not the philosophy behind any of this. You know, and again, the same way that if you got a call from another college and they said, "Gee, we really think you're doing a great job with Alex," for example. So could we come and talk to you about it? You'd say, "Sure."
Sort of following up on what Dorothy was saying. When I was looking at these, I'm an English instructor, and so I was looking at the English ones and noticed that they're doing what we're doing. And so based on those descriptions, there's really no indication of, okay, they're doing what we're doing, but differently.
Or even better.
Or better,
Sure.
or worse, no data,
Sure.
no details.
So two things about that. Number one, now I don't know a whole lot about your college, but I've looked at some stuff, okay? And I meant what I said when I spoke earlier today. You're farther along right now than many colleges that have been in the network, let's say, for a year or two, maybe even. So you're a very strong institution, which is great. I forgot now where I was going with this. What was your
What
question?
they're doing might be something we're already doing.
Sorry?
So what they're doing is something we've already accomplished.
Yeah, and
Understand
maybe in fact, you, even at your early stage, become a model for something you're doing that others are still struggling with.
I guess the question would be, how do we know, based on just looking at these descriptions, that someone out there is doing what we're doing, but they're doing
Yeah.
it better?
Okay, so typically what happens in just a very practical way, you would, let's say hypothetically I was your coach, you would say to me, "Gee, we're doing X, Y, and Z in English. We've looked, and it doesn't appear as if anybody's doing anything different or any better." And I'd say, "Okay." So I would send a correspondence, an email to all 100 coaches. And I would say, ICC is doing X, Y, and Z, and describe it a little in a paragraph. I'd say, are any of the colleges you're coaching doing it better or doing it different? They get back to me, I get back to you. So that's at least how I could be helpful.
Well, and the other thing to keep in mind is, thank you. Thank you for sharing the microphone. The other thing to keep in mind is they may be doing it, that high level paragraph, it sounds like the same thing, but they might have discovered a way to take it to scale. So everybody, right, so we have a lot of pockets of excellence here, but we don't do a lot of every student who meets this criteria, they all have the same access to whatever makes it better. And because that's hard to do. I mean, that's really hard to do. So if another school, maybe that high-level approach is very similar to what we're currently doing in pockets of excellence, and they figured out a way to make that work for everybody, maybe we could learn more about that. So as you look at these schools, focusing on the schools who've been in the network, maybe 5 to 7 years, they will have, we were having this conversation over here, they'll have far more data and they'll have a far more sophisticated methodology maybe than someone who's just getting started. So all they can say is, here's what we're doing, which is sort of the descriptions you were reading, where other people could say, we've been at it 5 years, we did early alert for 2, it was only successful for about half our students, so we changed this and this and this, and then it worked for 75, and now we're struggling with how to get the last 25 to be receptive and to figure out how we could scale that kind of advising, tutoring support all the way through. So it sort of happens in stages. It's almost sort of an iterative process as you take on student success. You'll fix something and make it better, but it's still not good for everybody, so then you'll tweak it again. And so it's like, just like we know with ICC, with our wonderful history, with continuous process improvement, you may not find the right answer that works for everybody out of the gate, but it would be a big step forward, right? And then you keep working on it.
And then one thing may lead to another that's a really big deal, because lots of these things can't or don't work as well if they're done in isolation.
I have another question. When you're looking at these, it says start academic year. So if it says, what does start academic year? And then it says reporting year. So like this one, it says start academic year 2011, 2012. and then it says reporting year 2016 active. So it's an ongoing project that they've been doing since 2011, 12. So they've been working on it like 5 years, and then they report?
Well, it may be this, let me take a guess because I'm not sure, but it may be the case. When colleges join the network, at the end of their first year, they complete what's referred to as an implementation plan. The implementation plan contains not more than 3 big ideas that hopefully will lead to increased student completion, persistence, graduation, and so on. You're already working on a few big ideas. And so for some colleges who haven't thought about any of this at all, they literally have to spend the entire first year scrambling, and I mean scrambling, to determine and locate the data and disseminate the data and disaggregate the data. They've literally got to really scramble that first year to arrive at those 2 or 3 big ideas that are going to really propel them forward and result in much higher percentages of students that are successful.
So how does this, like in AQUIB, we have to have 3 action projects going. So does this become almost like a student learning AQUIB project, but that has 3 sub-projects? Do you see what I'm saying?
No. Because the goal here is not to make more work. The goal here is, and especially for you, because you're going to have how many work groups? 5, 7? I'm losing 5. All right. So your 5 groups are going to do, whether you're part of ATD or not, your 5 groups are going to do a lot of work to try and come up with those interventions that will help as many students as possible be successful, and those interventions that merit being brought to scale. For you, it's almost an automatic, seamless process, if you will, even to do the implementation plan, because you're just going to extrapolate from those ideas that based on your data would seem to suggest that if they're brought to scale will have the greatest impact on the greatest number of students. And that's really good. My point is that there are some colleges that unfortunately are simply clueless. I mean, you know, they're nice people. They're just clueless, and so it takes a lot more work. And I say that, and I don't say that to ridicule anybody. I say that just in a very genuine way. You know, they just need a lot of hand holding and a lot of work. That doesn't appear to be the case. So getting back to your question about the 4 or 5 years. So in the implementation plan, the goals are set in such a way that they're carried out over a 4-year period. They're paced. And that's why you're seeing start and you're seeing active and you're seeing whatever that end date is. Because that's the life of the plan for them. Did that help?
Yes.
Oh, good, okay.
So I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Oh, let me give you the microphone, Kelly.
So we were looking at your filters. It might be helpful to us if you would add how many years you've been a member of Achieving the Dream. That would help us be able to look at programs that have been active for a little bit longer. Is that?
Okay. And I will make that suggestion to them. Sometimes when you've been in it as long as we've been in it, the really obvious things don't seem so obvious. But that's a great suggestion. I will send that to them.
Just like you said, most college instructors are very giving of their time, and a colleague calls and says, "No, I hear you're doing this and that and the other thing. Could you tell me more?" So, is there like a pact with the schools that belong that says, don't give out this information to just anybody, because then nobody else will sign up for our.
No. No, because, and now think of it this way, you know, every community college is located in a particular region. It's not like a university or some universities that are private where students go to them from all over the country, right? And so they're very competitive and secretive about what they're doing. Every community college has its own region or community. There'd be no benefit for another college in San Jose, California to say to ICC, we're not going to tell you what this is because this is our secret and we don't want anybody to have it.
No, I don't, I mean that they would not want to spend $75,000 a year to pay for the access to a coach. They would lose out on the coach, but they could still, like you say, I contact somebody in another school and say, I see you're working on this project, can you tell me more?
Sure.
So they tell you more.
Sure, we hope they would, yeah. We hope they would.
Unless you're a member of the network.
No, I'm saying that all you see is what we see, we're seeing right now. There's a map, emporium. Well, that sounds interesting, let's find out more. Now, you're right, you don't have all the details, but you would get the details from, the school.
But you don't see the school unless you're a member of the network.
Oh, yeah, you see the school. Yeah, you see the school. No.
Does everybody have access to this portal?
It's a public portal.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, this is
think so,
ATD's
yeah.
open website.
Because you've got access to it, yeah.
It's your portal.
But understand this, at any point, at any time, any of you can call anybody across the country and say, gee, I read this in Community College Journal about your college, and can you tell me more? And hopefully they're going to do that. The benefit here with the network is it's kind of like a club. They're going to say, oh yeah, okay. You're part of ATD, and so we'll arrange for a team to come. We'll set this up. We'll send an agenda. We'll work on this together. It's a different level of engagement or connection.
That's
Is that
what I would.
helpful to-
Yeah, since I've done this work for a while, we knew who the leader schools were, and you can get their reports, and you can say, oh, look at that data, and here's what they did. There's a difference between reading that 3-page summary and then sitting down with your team and knowing what to change at your college, or knowing how to make that work, or knowing how everyone's systems are different, everyone's approaches are different. So it really does. So I think the gist of your question is, what are you paying for if you could get this information and call them yourselves? Well, that's one way to do it. We could call around and have people send us their reports, right? But it's all that culture and that background and those systems behind it. So you go, that's amazing what you did. And they'll say, well, let me tell you, right? It was 3 years worried about this, and we had to do this, and we got hung up on curriculum committee with this one, and here's how we had to. And that's sort of the learning that I think that helps you move forward. So I think there isn't a college in the country, ATD to ATD or not, who's going to tell another community college, no, we're not going to share. I just don't, that's not how we operate. Universities do that. I don't think it's how we operate. But I also don't know that they're going to spend the 3 weeks with you. You may learn to really do that. That's what your coaches and your data coaches, and that's sort of what they help you do.
Sure. That makes sense. And also, there's a national conference annually called DREAM, at which 3,000 faculty and staff from the member colleges go, and it's simply, people have gone to it, faculty in particular have gone to it, have told me that it's unlike anything they've ever been to before because they're one-on-one with other faculty, and it's not wasted time. That's what it is. It's not wasted time because there are hundreds of sessions. You pick what you like, and you're listening to folks that are like you, and in a very smaller setting. I just realized I somehow ended up with owning the microphone. Who can I give this to?
Who else would like to talk about the project or projects that they looked at?
Because I want to give the
We've heard
microphone
from curriculum.
to
What
somebody.
about? Okay. Goal 1, completion.
Could I just say one more thing that I thought of? No. Okay, yeah, thank you. And then I promise I'm going to give you the microphone. How many of you exercise? When I exercise, and I had a trainer for probably 10 years, personal trainer, and I just know that with that personal trainer, I did things that I wouldn't have done otherwise for all kinds of reasons. Now, eventually, I gave up the personal trainer after 10 years because I pretty well had gotten very disciplined and pretty well had learned as much as I was going to get out of the personal trainer. That really isn't a bad comparison to achieving the dream, because having coaches isn't just a nice kind of show and tell experience. Having coaches is really working with some other folks that are going to say, okay, you did 10 push-ups last week. You helped 100 students last week. What are you doing next week? And what are your bigger plans? What's your ultimate goal? And then periodically checking in with you to see what kind of progress you're making on it. And if there are detours, helping you reroute. Kind of like Siri does, helping you reroute and get back on path, right? Sorry.
So we had completion, and one of the things that I just found right before Jill brought us all back together was from a community college in California called, I think, Cerro Coso. And I actually found this community college and its plan by kind of fussing with the size of the city and some of those other filters. And to the problem of completion, they've instituted a program called required matriculation, which if you require graduation, it seems like the best way to have students complete. But in doing that, that's just what it's called. It brings together so many of the other things that we encountered in some of our researches into this. I kept seeing the word mandatory throughout these searches: mandatory advising, mandatory orientation, mandatory student success. That's all well and good, but what does that actually mean in practice? And so a little bit closer to home, we found at Northeast Wisconsin Technical College something called student touch points, which it kind of sounds like they took what we call celebration of learning and merged it somehow. And I'm really just summarizing because it's a long description. But they took celebration of learning, they kind of merged it with student orientation so that students come in, they are oriented to the college, but then they immediately go to program information sessions. They do, instead of one-on-one advising, they do a kind of like group advising so that they come up with program plans and all of the rest. So I won't go into any more of the details because there were so many details. That's basically what I have right now. But really specific ways of helping students succeed right from the beginning. Another thing that came up is degree works. Would you like to talk about that a little bit? Advising software.
Oh yeah, one of the sites we saw had basically advising software. And I'm not sure what the name of it was now, but basically, instead of, which we're doing now, you have a paper copy of, okay, did the student take their 110? Have they done this math? Have they done that? Checklist type thing. This is an online one that keeps that student's data online, so you as the advisor and the student can see it all the time. So when they come in, you don't have to have a file for every student. It's all online based. Obviously, I'm sure there's a fee associated with it, but there was just, like I said, there's just different things we've been picking up here real quick from other colleges that would maybe benefit us, I think so.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, just frankly, the more I just saw the same thing. Just in the few little bits that I was able to see on my laptop, I saw the same kinds of ideas. Of course, everybody has their own luster. Everybody adds their own particular personality to it. But if you bring it all together, I guess you call it required matriculation. So that's that.
Or graduation.
Which is graduation, right?
All right, what about goal 4, student engagement?
Okay, goal 4, student engagement. We had quite a discussion. We have a lot of ideas. We looked at a site, and it was Bunker Hill, right? Okay, and we really focused in on the mandatory student orientation, although unsure of exactly what that would look like. We each had examples from our own areas of students needing that type of support and perhaps failing out because they did not get it, or could not access all of our professional speak or whatever. So we don't have ideas what we have ideas that it needs to happen. Our students need to have some type of orientation, especially for those who come in from first generation college student, or they are the first generation college student out of a family that has not yet had that. And we have examples of students well, we all have examples of students and what we assume they know and what they really don't know. So I would really like it if some of my colleagues here would add something to it. Okay, there you go.
Like she said, we were more concerned with the mandatory only because when we see students don't know what resources to go to when they need certain help. And so we're like that if we can set up something where we know that they will go to it, because we know nowadays everything is quick for them, and if it's not there, they're not going to go to it. And we'll have to usually take their hand and take them to it. So if we do new, I guess mandatory, if we do that, we're thinking that if we make it mandatory, they'll go. And so, but that's basically what we really talked about.
What stakeholders at the institution worked on that project? Did it say? Who was involved in it? Does it talk about collaboration across units or?
Yes, it did. It talked about advising, retention, who else was in there? Enrollment, faculty, adjunct. It talked about everyone across the college working together in unity, so in unison, I should say. And then one thing we talked about was like, I do retention. I work with retention. However, I was telling these young ladies here that I don't know any of them, and they don't know me, and and they would never know that they have a student in the class that they could send to me, and I would never know that that they work with this student that I have an issue and concern about. And then there's some instructors that I might send an email to, but never get a response.
Okay, thank you. Because as we look through this showcase intervention, let's remember some of our CQI lessons that we already know as an institution to move forward in this. We know collaboration works. It's worked for us in many cases. We know that shared interest with students work. And so some of these showcases really focus on that. What about college and career readiness? Do you have anything to talk about?
We're the rebels in the group.
Well, let's hear from the rebels.
Okay. Well, chicken. So we walked in late. Is this on? And we decided just to explore. We did a lot of career academic services because that's really what we do a lot of. We're both tutors. We also teach. So we found some things that we actually do a lot of these things that different names for different things, but they're still similar in nature to what we do. So I thought that was kind of encouraging, interesting. There might be more things on there that we didn't get into the nuts and bolts of it, but we did find one thing kind of skirting through stuff called finish line game, and we thought we'd just sort of throw this out to you because I thought it was very interesting. And what they did with this is they followed in the footsteps of 10 students through the process of their whole their experience applying for school, getting to school. And I think about our students, a lot of them we've got a lot of non-traditional students. We have a lot of students coming, we have a number of students coming in who don't have cars, who have to rely on the bus to get here. And what would it be like to have to sit out there for an hour and wait for the bus to come, and then show up 10 minutes late to class every day because that's when your bus gets here? I mean, I think it would be a really interesting experience and some of the instructors or the administrators talked about what an eye-opening experience this was to have to walk in the footsteps of their students, to see what they had to experience, and maybe be able to then tailor some of our classes and our instructions and all of our things that would help them become more successful, because that's what we're aiming towards, is the success rate of our students. And some of them just get bogged down in not being able to, the process of getting to class, of being able to find the resources they need. Are they accessible? Are they easily marked? Can they find things they need on our campus? We know where they are because we go them all the time, but do they know? Can they find them? I thought this was a very interesting process to go through and experience what a first-time student would experience, even walk with them or follow through them to find out what the hurdles they go through and what they need to do to become successful.
So one of our lessons at ICC of CQI is that we've learned about, in order to have impact, we have to have institutional change. So did you see hallmarks of institutional change in that report out of that initiative?
don't think they said so. They just said it was interesting.
I think you described some an eye-opening experience, institutional change.
Which created conversations.
Okay.
Yes. And
Wonderful.
I think that they did make decisions from that point. All right.
Thank you. Employee training?
Yeah, I guess we'll go.
There you go.
So I guess we had a slight problem with ours too. Nothing was really closed up. Everything was still active. And for the most part, it seems to make sense. Faculty development, employee training, that type of thing. One thing I found was interesting was a lot of these campuses had something called Faculty Development Academy, that type of thing, where basically the whole faculty comes together and says, okay, what do we want to learn about to make us better teachers? And they go ahead and just have this nice forum going. They go ahead and decide on those things. And then every year they hold sessions where all the teachers get together and just learn about what those things were that they voted on. So from our perspective, I mean, our employee training has been mostly, independent, as far as I've seen. I haven't been here that long. Latest official employee training we had was that on-course thing we had during the summer, which was pretty fantastic. But for the most part, if you have a certification or some type of degree where you need to keep it up, that's mostly where the employee training comes from the individual. But it seems like a pretty good idea maybe to just, go ahead and take it on in our school. What would we like to learn about? What would we like to take and, develop for ourselves to make ourselves better for the students?
All right, thank you. So I think what you were talking about is scale. It was scale to include all of the faculty versus individual pockets. All right, thank you. Other comments at this table? All right. Brian, are you ready? Me? Yes.
I'll start off. We're kind of in the same boat. A lot of like ongoing projects were going on. We're Goal 2 college and career readiness. I'm sorry. What college was it? Was it Calhoun? Yeah, Calhoun had like a K through 12 initiative where they called it K through 12, but they focused on juniors in high school, where they came out like the first 5 Saturdays of the semester in the fall, and basically they kind of did an orientation and getting prepared to take tests. And they had some numbers like 98 out of, or is this a different one? Out of 131, I think, completed the 5 weeks. And by doing that, they saved almost 6 credit hours per student.
Some very specific measures of success they talked
Yeah.
about in that. Very specific measures of success that were achieved.
Yes, that was the one that most stood out because, they had hard data. And there was another one, FastTrack, where the again, juniors and seniors came out over the summer and pretty much did the same thing. They had to do they got credit for an orientation class, and they were taking reading and math so they could retest. And
So students clearly knew what the outcome was. This is what you're going to get. And the college knew what they were measuring. This is what we're measuring and how to measure it. Okay. Thank you. Anything else from the table?
So Calhoun is one of the colleges that I coach, and I started with them as a new college. The FastTrack Program, which is the one that helps juniors and seniors before they come to college, it started out, good grief, it started out with 50 students maybe. They went to 100 the second year. They're now up to maybe 200-300. But we're encouraging them as strenuously as we can encourage, not being part of the institution, to take that to scale, because their results really are showing that students are bypassing developmental ed and saving those students a lot of unnecessary credits. Some other colleges do kinds of things that are similar to that. They call them boot camps, summer boot camps. And so they might be summer boot camps only in math, for example, because that's where students have so much trouble but doing well on Accuplacer. But the boot camp concept, or the summer fast track concept, is one that has caught on pretty well. I don't know if you do boot camps here or any of that. Yeah, it's worth looking into. It's worth looking into, yeah. And the other thing I wanted to mention with the Teaching and Learning Center, I think you were talking about, and we were talking about the advantage of it because it brings professional development to scale, but there's another bonus to it, another byproduct to it, which is this. It has a very self-empowering characteristic because it isn't professional development being developed for you, telling you what it is you need to learn. It's you deciding what it is would be great to learn. And there's a whole different attitude, obviously, as you know, when we decide what it is we want to do rather than somebody else telling us what it is we need to do.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Brian. Any other comments from the table? Observations? All right, goal 3, curriculum. That's okay. We can go on to goal 1 completion. I don't want to force anyone to speak. If you
I found something
perhaps
else.
go ahead.
Some of the projects under curriculum have to deal with like student engagement and all, because they're talking about pairing advisors with faculty mentors, and so there seems to be some overlap, kind of, that maybe it's
Absolutely.
not in student engagement, but it's over here in curriculum, but it kind of has a...
Again, that impact that it can have on multiple stakeholders working together, the impact of that work on deliberate collaboration that leads to a specific outcome. All right, completion? Thank you, Dorothy.
So to go along with the orientation, the mandatory orientation, Austin Community College in the great state of Texas, up to 2 weeks before the courses start, they change their orientation to they open up an online version. So I kind of like the idea they don't necessarily have it available all the time, but if you're getting to crunch time, it does have that online orientation. The other thing that we liked is if a student was enrolled into 2 developmental math courses, and you know how 2 weeks we have our early intervention too, our academic intervention. So if they are being reported as unsuccessful, they assign them success coaches, and it looks like that has been successful. I think that was at Harper. So did you have anything else?
One other thing we talked about was mandatory. That's come up also. And one of the schools said, hey, if you come and do an orientation, we'll give you a backpack with a bunch of information in it. We thought that was daunting. You've gone to places and there's a backpack with lots of paper in it. So one idea we came up with is if you go through the mandatory orientation, you get a $25 voucher for the bookstore. And it has to be, and if they don't take advantage, we include it in our fees, of course, so if they don't take advantage of it, we make $25, and if they do, we're giving it back to them.
Hey, wait, I thought it was 20 when I wasn't going to
We were talking, well, it's got to be enough. That was part of the discussion. It can't be too much where it adds to their fees, like 100, but it can't be too little, like $5 for a candy bar. Yeah,
But again,
so, I mean,
the outcome of that was the focus on the student. What do you want the student to get from that? What's
no, the focus
is
on
the
that
student.
discussion was what is it to be mandatory? We cannot make it mandatory to say if you don't do this, we won't register, because that defeats the purpose. We have to be innovative in what we define mandatory to be. We want them to do it. We have to give them an incentive that doesn't keep them from enrolling.
But the focus is on student success. That's what we want.
Well, sure, and getting them through the process.
Absolutely. All right, other closing comments, because he has the evaluation sheets in hand. So I'm going to hand the, Dr. Bailey, do you have any closing comments? And Mary?
I'm still we have 3 minutes.
Thank you for coming, right? This is an incredibly busy time right before the semester opens, so I really appreciate you taking the time to explore this. I understand there may be some frustration in the room in terms of the level of detail that was provided here. So some things I'd have you consider is we've identified some really big things that we want to do together. So do we want to do that sort of in partnership and in collaboration and sort of have some buddies along the way who may be further along. And maybe Mary's right. Maybe there's some schools who are starting or maybe a year in. And we've done some things that maybe they haven't done yet. So I'm not saying that, we all know we've done wonderful things. What we have yet to do is at scale systemically change the experience here so all students have an experience that we know from the data and what works, that they all have that experience as we go forward. So the institutional decision we're making is, do we want to go at this alone and sort of start from scratch, or do we join an organization and create a network where you sort of stand on the shoulders of others? It doesn't mean everything they have in there we will do. It doesn't mean we will do it exactly like anybody else did it. But would we look at maybe 4 or 5 other models that seem to be successful, figure out what works best for our students and in our culture, and sort of use that to maybe move a little faster down the pipeline, as opposed to, I mean, we did this work for 7 years at Harper before I came. I'd like to think I wouldn't want to do those 3 painful iterations of early alert the way we did it there. I think we'd sort of go, you know what we found worked in the end? Let's start there and see if you can't build on. And that's what this is about. It's a network, it's a collaboration, it's about learning from others, it's about us sharing as well. So I guess and I would say, and if anyone else have any other organizations you want to put on the table, please do. But from my research in our market, in community college market, this is probably the most sophisticated network in terms of the colleges doing the best work in the country. Doesn't mean they have all the answers or it's going to be everything for us, but do we do it on our own or do we do it in partnership? I think that's sort of the base level of the decision we need to make.
It's a pretty research-based network, evidence-based network. So you're not just kind of shooting from the hip when you decide to do something or even learn from another institution. The other bonus, and some of these things are a little harder to get your hands around, but I'll try in my clumsy language to explain. Sometimes when you start getting exposure to what other colleges are doing, even like what you're doing this afternoon, it sparks some creativity in you that wasn't there before, or that was there but was sleeping. I don't know how else to put it. And so you start to become a different person as a result of this exposure. Now that's kind of touchy-feely, and that's I'm not talking about a program. I'm talking about a mindset, a culture. A culture that will be identified by your inquisitiveness, your creativity, your innovation. Not so much by just repeating or replicating what others are doing. Thank you. The other thing I might add is that this is a snapshot today. You understand that, right? I mean, it's kind of like you take your phone and snap. That's all you're getting is just a little snapshot of yet the journey you could go on.
Well, thank you all for coming today. I'm going to turn it over to Colin.
Okay, the last 5 minutes, I have some evaluation forms. Please fill them out the best you can, and when you're finished, just place them right back where the sign-in roster was. I'd really appreciate that.